here President and the we are here today to reflect 10 years down the line after the new constitution was promulgated. What is the progress and what are the challenges? Of course, our constitution is quite progressive. Have been promised and asked for. And Kenya, which is about to be a multi-party democratic state, founded on the principles and the values of good governance. Sometimes we don't discuss that article because actually it is what the constitution envisages about this country. Kenya, which is a multi-party democratic state, founded on the principles and values of good governance in Article 10. And from there, you find very radical and progressive provisions from Article 1, which indicates that all the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. Article 10 on values and principles, Article 19, which says the human rights is going to be the foundation for the formulation of our social, political, and economic policies, which is most of we don't reflect a lot among other frameworks which are supposed to enhance good governance at all levels in the management of public affairs. And over time, we have seen a lot of resistance, especially to foster progressive and positive implementation of the constitution. The progressive nature of the constitution grants immunity to the interests of the political elite, because once you have the sovereign power to the people, you have human rights being the center of governance, and you have provisions on leadership and leverage, among others. That's when it becomes a big problem when it comes to managing the interests of the political elite who are used to the culture of impunity in the management of public affairs. And you would see that lack of commitment even from the day the constitution was being adopted, the 27th of August. That was the day when Kenyans were even arrested for going into the streets to protest the presence of Omar al-Bashir, the president invited in the country as part of the presidential guest list to attend that event. And because he was facing charges on around crimes against humanity, Kenyans thought this presence here is against the so with good intentions, we went to the streets and the people were arrested just the same day. So you can see where we lost the spirit. From day one, there was no commitment at all from the political elite. And there are many other manifestations. For example, the way we have continued labor injustices, which remain unresolved, large problems in the country. For the last 10 years, we have seen so many land problems, which KHRC and other partners have been intervening around. We have also seen very good attempts to frustrate the operations of constitutional commissions and independent offices, including the judiciary, which was supposed to be playing a more critical role in terms of weakening the powers of the political elites and also deepening the implementation of the constitution. Of course, when it comes to economic and social rights, we have seen so many problems in terms of the right to housing, the right to education, health, water, among others. Of course, security and under the chapter on national security is envisaged to be governed under the principles of human rights, rule of law, and good governance. But the impunity we have seen among the security apparatus in the country is something to confirm that we are yet to transition from what was envisaged in the constitution from a police force to a national police service. So therefore, yesterday we came up with a political hashtag around this context, which we are calling stronghold, but lived. So which means there's been so many attempts to strangle these very progressive documents. And you know, when we adopted this, some of us got a copy from the government printer with our names. You can see the level of commitment and belief we have in this. So we have seen, therefore, that attempt to frustrate the constitution, but because of its radical nature, it has outlived those attempts. And from where we sit, we say this document does not deserve an amendment. We are calling for full and complete and immediate and continuous implementation. And this conversation is not going to end today. Next month, we are going to have Tisa. October, we are going to have Kumi. So we'll go through all these days up to December when we are marking the National Human Rights Day, and even next year, this is going to be part of our conversation, pushing for the culture of a constitutional democracy in the country. So with those few remarks, I welcome all of us and call upon all of us to continue upholding and defending the Constitution as provided in the Constitution. Karibuni sana na katiba lazima itekelezwe.
Thank you so much, Davis. And yeah, indeed, the struggle continues even 10 years on. And this session, this celebration wouldn't have been possible without various partners who came on board. Beyond the Kenya Human Rights Commission, there's also Mazingira, the International Commission of Jurists Kenya, Uriah Katiba Institute, and Inuka Nisisi. And speaking of which, we have a representative from Inuka Nisisi, Akawive Wambua, who will be giving a few remarks.
Thank you so much. I think this time in the history of our country is a time that Kenyans should wake up, should rise up, and defend the Constitution of Kenya. This is because the constitutional discussion, the discourse on getting a new constitution went on for more than 30 years until 2010. And all this time, Kenyans were saying, we need a new way of engaging with our leadership. And after those 30 years, we got a new constitution. And now, just 10 years later, when it has not been implemented, people are saying, let us amend it. And the question that we are asking is, what is the rationale? How do you change something that you have not tried on? So we need to adjudge those people as out of order. They are not speaking for us as citizens because this is our constitution. And there are two things that I think eminent scholars and eminent people in our communities have said. Professor Shivji has said that the constitution is about making laws, making a framework for humanizing us, making us more human. It's not about the glory of a few people. It's not about a few people getting positions of power. No, it should be about how we become more human. And in regard to the current constitutional discussions, our own former Chief Justice Mutunga said that this call for a new, an amendment is like, us as Kenyans got a baby, we got a child. And then we gave this child to a cartel of traffickers of body parts and child traffickers. And we are asking them to take care of the child for us. And he's saying, let us take back our child. Katiba ni yetu, si ya wao. Tukue na maskani zetu, tukae chini, tuzungumze kuhusu katiba yetu. Na tuhakikisha kwamba sauti yetu imesikika kila mahali. Na tusiogope kama kusema ni nini shida kubwa, ni nini ndovu mkuu katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Kwa sababu hivyo tu ndio tutaweza kuhakikisha kwamba mtoto wetu, huyu mtoto tuliyemzaa, hata kama ako na jambo ambalo tutaweza kumlea atekeleze, sasa hivi ni mtoto wetu, sivyo? We protect our child. Kwa hivyo tunasema karibuni nyote, tuzungumze kuhusu kutekeleza katiba. Asante.
And indeed, we need to take that child back. Now 10 years old. It is time it is back in the custody of the Kenyan people. Well said. And I'd like to invite our next speaker. He is the executive director at Mazingira Institute. He is a prolific civil society activist. He's been in this space for years. He's also on the KHRC board, and he's well known for the Operation Firimbi, which is a whistleblower campaign on land reform, also an anti-graft campaign that helped bring some attention to quite a few misdeeds on this and previous governments. I'd like to invite to the floor now one of our virtual panelists, Mr. Davinda Lamba. Round of applause for him.
Thank you, moderator. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's flashing. That's better. No, it's not flashing. You are covering your mic. Can you hear me? Okay, so you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Thank you. A very warm welcome to the webinar to all those who have joined us. There is a background to this event with this group of organizers, and that is that civil society activists and constitutional reformers convened at Mazingira Institute following the promulgation of the Constitution on 27th of August 2010 to celebrate the momentous event. We have collectively convened without fail at Mazingira to commemorate every Katiba anniversary and to reflect on its implementation. Today is our 10th collective convening to virtually commemorate the 10th Katiba anniversary, and we will do so in the future. At our commemoration events, we remember and honor all those who were killed, jailed, tortured, and impoverished by the Kanu Moy regime during the struggle led by the National Convention Assembly cum NCEC movement to realize a people-driven constitutional process that would deliver the Katiba Mupia of we, the people. The story of the struggle is retold in a new edition of the book Constitution Making from the Middle, authored by the retired Chief Justice Willie Mutunga. It was launched today at a webinar organized by ICJ and Strathmore University. You will see that there is no public expression of Katiba at 10 commemoration by the private sector that I'm aware of, by the faith sector, by the professional association sector, trade unions, or independent constitutional commissions. It is the civil society and some academic bodies that are commemorating. What do we make of this? Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lamba. Wonderful words indeed, and something to reflect on, especially on this day. At this juncture, I'd like to release our speakers who have already addressed us to take their seats, but it's also important to observe a very important part of our identity as Kenyans, and that is the national anthem. We cannot start an event like this where we commemorate 10 years of this constitution without observing our national anthem. So I request, even for those of you who are watching, please rise with us. I'd like to also invite 5C to lead us through this.
Ee Mungu nguvu yetu, ilete baraka kwetu, haki iwe ngao na mlinzi, na tukae na undugu, amani na uhuru, raha tupate na ustawi. Amkeni ndugu zetu, tufanye sote bidii, nasi tujitoe kwa nguvu. Nchi yetu ya Kenya tunayoipenda, tuwe tayari kuilinda. na tujenge taifa letu, ndio wajibu wetu. Kenya istahili heshima, tuungane mikono pamoja kazini, kila siku tuwe na shukrani.
So much. Thank you to Davis and Kawive for your remarks as well. Thank you. And now to an individual who we like to call the father of our Constitution. He grew up in colonial Kenya and has seen this country through various facets. He understands the struggles. He's been a long-time freedom fighter. He is a brilliant constitutional mind, not only in this country, but across the continent, a pioneering human rights defender. His name is Professor Yash Palgai. He's well into his 80s, but is still very sharp, still very fiery, and is going to share on some of his reflections as we look and commemorate this 10 years since the Constitution was promulgated. He'll talk to us through this decade of the Katiba, its birth, implementation, and the challenges. He's not here with us physically, but he joins us virtually. Round of applause for Professor Guy. And as we're trying to get Professor Guy online, just a reminder of how important this Constitution is. It was people-driven. The whole idea of the Constitution was to ensure that the power stayed with the people of Kenya. And even when you look at our Constitution and how it's structured, Chapter 1 deals with the sovereignty of the people and supremacy of the Constitution. It gave the idea that the Kenyan people handed over power to be ruled to their elected leaders. And we hope that that is a reality and not just a dream deferred. And of course, we'll be talking to Professor Guy to tell us what he envisioned. What did they think would be conceived out of this Constitution, and whether 10 years on, that is the case for many Kenyans in this country. We heard from our previous speakers that some of this process has been hijacked by some selfish political elitists who would want to try and twist it and manipulate it to their liking. But it is upon the Kenyan people to use their voices, to use the power and sovereignty that has been handed to them as a result of this supreme law, and to use it to their advantage. It's the Kenya that they had in their minds, in their hearts, to become a reality, not just for them living now, but for the generations that follow. And that has been the beauty of this Constitution. The chapters that follow, of course, a very strong Bill of Rights, and that would not have been possible or even included if it wasn't for the hard work of various actors. The Kenyan Human Rights Commission was very, very instrumental in ensuring that we have a robust and strong Bill of Rights, that is Chapter 4, ensuring that human rights are enshrined in the Constitution. And that's one very interesting bit about the whole crafting of this piece of law, was human rights was at the center of it all, to ensure that Kenyans felt their voices were being heard, they were being protected, and their rights protected as well. As you see throughout this program, we'll be talking about some of the issues when it comes to the violation of those very rights. Chapter 43 deals with economic and social rights when it comes to access to adequate housing, access to health, access to education. And throughout this pandemic, you've been seeing how some of those rights have been denied. And the question is, were those rights protected by the people who they were given to? And we'll be talking about that. We'll be hearing from individuals who unfortunately suffered directly the violation of those rights. And we'll be getting Professor Guy on shortly. We understand there's a bit of a technical hitch. But for now, I would like to invite Honorable Isaac Abdi Adan. He is a victim of the Kariobangi evictions. If you can remember, in early May, there were evictions where 8,000 people were moved from their homes. Whole communities, shops, churches, homes, mothers, fathers, children were uprooted from their shelter and having to look for shelter elsewhere. It was devastating. And there was a huge outcry in the local and in the international spaces. How could something like this happen in the middle of a pandemic? Well, here to tell us more of what happened on that day and what has happened since is Mzee Isaac Abdi Adan. Please.
Anaitwa Isaac Abdi Adan. Leo tunakutana hapa, tunaomba sheria aheshimiwe, sheria afanye kazi. Kwa sababu sheria Kenya haifanyi kazi, haisaidii wananchi ya Kenya. Sheria anatengenezewa binadamu, sio anatengenezewa mnyama. Kitengenezewa binadamu anafaa kusaidia wananchi ya Kenya. Mimi nimetoka Kariobangi. Kariobangi mali mimi nimetoka imedhulumiwa ya kutosha. Shamba ya Kenya kitoka Mombasa mpaka Malaba ni ya serikali ya Kenya. Serikali ya Kenya ndio anakubalia raia yake, raia anakaa sehemu fulani. Sisi ni baadhi ya raia hiyo. Serikali imekubaliwa sisi sehemu kidogo tukae. Ilibatiwa na sharia, hajabatiwa na mdomo. Hiyo shamba ilibatiwa na sharia, document ya shamba. Anaanzia hapa kitoka allotment, kitu naitwa allotment. Anafatilishwa kitu naitwa lease agreement. Imefatilishwa na kitu naitwa minute full council. Misho imefika kwa title D. Title D imebatia sisi baka title D ndio hizo document. Sharia Kenya vile tunajua mahali wewe imekaa maka 12 atakuwa yako. Lakini sisi watu wa Kariobangi tulikaa pale maka 26 kitoka 1996. Sio mimi nasema na mdomo, watu wasome hii allotment ndio hii wakabatia sisi 1996. Ikihesabu ni maka 26. Je, kama sharia katiba Kenya imekubali mtu mali mekaa maka 12 itakuwa yake, na sisi wananchi ya Kenya ndio serikali hii tumejenga tumechakua maka 26, kwa nini nashinda kufanya kazi? Mali tumekaa maka 26 ilibomolewa bila sharia, bila haki. Shamba ni ya serikali, serikali iko na nguvu. Ikihitaji hiyo shamba anaweza nyang'anya raia yake, lakini iko sharia akunyang'anya. Nabatia notice, anahamishwa bole bole, ipeleke mali ingine, serikali inaweza chukua shamba na njia hiyo. Lakini sisi bila notice, bila kubatiwa nafasi, imewekwa tarakta na bunduki, askari 500 na tarakta 4. Wakati ya kofi na wakati ya baridi, wamama na watoto wanalala. Saa 11 ya usiku tulikuta tarakta, polisi anatembea mbele yake, anabomolewa sisi bila sheria, bila haki. Je, kwa nini sisi nakosa haki? Sisi hapana wananchi ya Kenya. Wakati anabomolewa, tuko na court order, imetoka High Court. Imekataa kuheshimu order ya High Court, wakabomolewa jumba yetu. Wananchi imefurushwa, imetupwa nje, wakawachwa hivyo hivyo. Sisi ni wananchi ya Kenya. Kitoka siku hiyo, serikali hajarudi nyuma. Hata kama ananyang'anya shamba, sisi ni wananchi. Serikali anafaa kuangalia, hajarudi nyuma kuangalia hiyo watu iko wapi, hiyo watu analala wapi, hiyo watu anakula lini. Serikali ya Kenya hajaangalia sisi mpaka dakika hii. Afadhali wale watu umeangalia sisi, watu wa women right group, anaongoza na mama moja anaitwa Mumbi. Hiyo watu ndio anazunguka, anatafuta mahindi, unga ya mahindi, anatafuta sukari, anatafuta kitu kidogo kidogo, analetea wao watu maskini ambao imeharibiwa mali yao. Kwa hivyo tunaomba sheria ya Kenya afanye kazi. Kama haifanyi kazi, anatengenezwa ajue nini? Sheria anafaa kusaidia wananchi, anafaa kusaidia watu wa Kenya. Kwa hivyo tunaomba sheria afanye kazi, na serikali ya Kenya, misho yangu, asaidie sisi. Usiwache sisi hivyo, kwa sababu serikali ni yetu. Sisi ndio tumechakua na kura yetu, ndio tumejenga. Iko haki ya kusaidia. Hata kama ananyang'anya shamba, iko haki ya kusaidiwa. Kwa nini serikali anafurusha sisi, anatupa, anawacha sisi hivyo? Nimemaliza na hiyo.
Thank you so much, Mzee Adan, for your spirited account. It was very difficult to also be on the other side as the media to report on such activities. And the hope is that never happens again in this country, as long as we have a constitution like we do. We'd like to get into some entertainment at this point as we wait for our other panelists to join us. I'd like to call up on the stage Dorfan. He's a spoken word artist, and he'll be speaking about the erosion of the Constitution and just some of the struggles that we have seen over the last 10 years. Dorfan is well known for his pieces on social justice. So hopefully through this piece, he awakens and enlightens our minds on what needs to be done to ensure that this constitution is fully implemented. Round of applause for Dorfan.
Shukran.
Mambo yale na matendo yale yale.
Seems the more vitu zina change, the more zina stay the same. Ni kama tuko 2005 tena. Tofauti ni oranges na bananas zina share basket same. Mwananchi shtuka ukisikia yet more referendum calls to rival teams wakianza kubuild bridges and all. Your substitution. Public participation in aftermath baada ya wao kumake decision. Any further contribution kutoka kwako ni ornamental. At this stage, page za constitution ni tissue kwa watu waliapa kwa enforce legislations. Mission tena si kuchunga umati. Kamati na orders mpya za kufanya subtraction kwa interest za corporations. Haki wengao lakini mlinzi ni wao. Commission iko committed kufanya omission ya truth. The confusion na contradiction venye kila moja na claim innocence. Lakini bodyguards wako armed to the truth. Looters wanatuzwa. Lakini justice ni extrajudicial kwa slums, moms wakiomboleza sons ni uncouth. Appointments na tenders kwa pretenders, babu ya mtu bado ni youth. Employment nayo ni competition. Karata na masters au qualify kwa contender. Tubabe ya mtu bado a rule of law iko above or below some. So nini option? Kama uko bound kuuliwa kabla uone court doors. Ni rahisi kwa polisi kuchukua sheria in their own hands. Kama rais anazidi ku flaunt court orders in his own land. Wananchi shtuka. Kama mtu anatumia pesa alikuibia kujilipia bei. Shtuka. Casanova alipigia devolution debe akianza kulia imefeli. Question ni mbona kuna unanimous demand for more funds for less transparency for paper trail. Shtuka. Mtu alikuwa against two that gender rules. Ikigeuka proponent of the blue. The repercussion ni baby book wa beneficiary juu ya company mhesh yani kuogelea ndani ya ocean. Tumegonga 10 years baada ya kuspend billions kubadilisha katiba. Lakini bado tuko in limbo kwa preamble tukistruggle na implementation.
Siku tofauti yani wale siku nyingine mambo yale hali tofauti matendo yale onyani wale mambo yale na matendo yale.
Ratiba ina change time ya succession. Hereditary politics, statistics na piko kusupport narratives za royalty, disloyalty. Elected faces ikiwa mask baada ya kupeana false promises, nemesis. Beneficiary wa umaskini akipewa kazi kusaka solutions za eradicate poverty, puppetry. Design streams na kwa pool. Constitutional violations ikifanyika ndani ya corridors of power. Twisted priorities. Taxpayer kutolewa kafara in the name of protecting property, proprietary. Nation ikuanda auction to the deepest pockets. Kwa necessary loans for the phantom project. Tadhani infantry venye economic hitmen wameshikilia vintage boys ndani ya treasury, executive na consecutive planners. Legislature ipo devoid of dentures, imeshindwa kuputa stop to plunder. Judiciary ni tertiary, venye criminals wanazidi kugraduate to freedom. Na freedom of speech ni illusion, kama wanna be tyrants ndo majority shareholders kwa media houses. Rwanda hakuna enough down na jamii na spouses. Over a decade later na watu Kibera bado wanangoja remedial house. Land bill ilizamishwa kwa still waters. Na bado tunazidi kucreate IDP. Justice ni taboo subject. Lakini the main object of discussion point is that peace ni important. Tumegonga miaka 10 baada ya kupitisha katiba, lakini bado tuko in limbo kwa preamble, tukisikia kuna implementation. Wananchi chunga, usijipate tumegonga 10 more on top of hizo 10 tumepoteza, kama bado tuko in limbo na katiba tukisikia kuitekeleza.
Kitu tofauti nani wale siku nyingine mambo yale hali tofauti matendo yale onyani wale mambo yale na matendo yale.
Amazing, beautiful sounds of Dorfin and his team. Thank you so much. One more round of applause. That was beautiful. Now to a very important part of our society, of our constitution, and that's women. Women make up over 50% of our population. That's at least according to the 2019 census last year. However, whenever we see them in this space of constitutional law, they don't feature as much. Our next panelists who will be joining us virtually will be talking about women and Katiba, locating the place of women and other marginalized groups. Her name is Wanjira Wanjiru, and she's from the Mathare Social Justice Center. She is a fiery woman. And if you can remember her from the Sabasaba Day protests, I remember there was a line that she said. She put her fist up in the air and she said, when we lose our fear, they lose their power. And that stuck with me because she showed that despite her being a woman, she showed us that women's voices belong on the front line. So I want to give the floor now to Wanjira as she speaks to the importance of women's voices and this constitution. Round of applause for her.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you online.
Asante, asante sana. I'd like to first start by honoring all those people that put their lives on the line right from when we started fighting for our independence as a country, Mekatilili, up to Wangari Maathai time, and now it's our era. And thank you, because there was somebody before me that stood up and was fearless and did not mind that I am a woman. So today is a very important day for our country, and I would like us to be honest with ourselves that our country is not in a very good place. Things are not okay in this country. And when we get to the bottom of all this, it is because we the people have refused to exercise our power. We the people have stood by as things go wrong in this country, as people are evicted, as police kill, maim, beat, all of that. And we need, as everybody has said, we need to make sure that our constitution is implemented. No one should tell us BBI, no one should tell us change the Katiba that they have not even tried to implement. And the women of this nation have a voice to speak about this Katiba. We are not well represented in parliament. Somebody was moving to court to call it an illegitimate parliament because of the two-third gender rule. So I would like us to challenge women, especially because this is the future of our children we are talking about here. This is the future of generations we are talking about here. And if we are not careful, 10 years later, we will come here and say, Katiba 20 years ago, what have we achieved? What have we not? Because 10 years later, we're still seeing the injustices that were there even before the Katiba. We still saw police beating a woman. If you remember the MCA that was beaten by police killing our children, the government disrespecting the rule of law, the judiciary calling out to the people and saying, now we need the people to step in because the executive is exercising too much power. So it is for us, the people, to give this Katiba as much importance as we give the Quran or the Bible, because this is the book that teaches us the laws of the land that we must uphold and that we must live. Yes, thank you, Vicky.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Wanjira. And indeed, this is the book that teaches us the laws of the land, and it should be upheld with the utmost respect. Thank you once more. At this point, I'd like to invite 5C Group once again to give us a bit of entertainment and a bit of a breather before we welcome our other speakers of the day. I understand they have something that is riveting that will get us excited about this celebration. 10 years since the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya. And it's always lovely to see that illustrated through the form of the arts, be it spoken word, as we saw with Dorfan, and now in music with 5C. And I understand they'll also be giving us a skit as well. Wonderful. One more round of applause for 5C.
hauna haki ama cheti chochote cha kuonyesha kwamba shamba hili ni lako, makusudi na ni hatia. Tafadhali ndugu, hitaji kibali, hitaji cheti, hata hii cheti inakaa ni bandia, cheti ni bandia, ni hatia. Kuna matamu sana haya, lazima hapa. Kazi nzuri nimefanya, Haya, sikiza ndugu.
Ukiona vyaelea, matunda haya hayakushuka mbinguni kufika mpaka hapa chini eh? Sisi wenyewe tumepalilia. Sasa kwa sababu umekula mali ya mwenzako, nipe gani? Hata nimepata yameoza, hata si matamu. Anyway, sisi ndio wenye mali, sisi ndio wenye sheria, sisi ndio wenye haki, sisi ndio wenye nchi hii. Kwa hivyo shamba hili ni letu. Na naomba mara moja muondoke sasa hivi na watu wako. Mama na baba mama hapa. Hatuondoki. Tuondoki, hatuondoki. Tuko na katiba ambayo tunaangalia. Mambo ya ndio sheria. Sisi ndio mabonyenye, sisi ndio wenye mali hapa nchini kwetu. Mambo haya mawili. Muondoka ama muondoki? Waondoke wasiondoke. Kabla sijapepesa macho, nawaambia kwamba shamba hili na wenyewe lishanunuliwa, nyinyi muondoke, kama sivyo, la sivyo. Haya, trakta, polisi, red police, toa watu hapa. Come on. Na wanafiki wacheka hali sisi tuliapo.
Powerful the Constitution indeed is in this country. Speaking of which, a service that is critical to the health and life and livelihood of Kenyans is health and healthcare. And that, of course, as a result of the Constitution, was devolved to the counties. Our next speaker, who will be joining us virtually, is Alfred Abengo, chairperson of the Nurses and Clinical Association of Kenya. And he'll be speaking about healthcare governance, especially in the context of COVID-19. We have seen how this pandemic has tested that structure of healthcare in this country, has tested whether or not our counties have been ready. Our national government's response also has been tested, and he'll be speaking to that in the context of a decade of Katiba. Round of applause for Alfred as he takes the floor.
Thank you so much, Victoria. You can hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to start by quoting Article 43 of our Constitution, which guarantees our citizen the highest attainable standard of health. The question is, as health has been guaranteed in the Constitution, have the citizens accessed it? A question that we need to ask ourselves. And then when we go to Article 41 of the Constitution, which also guarantees all workers the right to fair remuneration, the right to reasonable working conditions, the right to form, join, or participate in the activities and programs of a trade union, and the right to go on strike. So these are articles that guarantees the rights of the health workers and all other workers, and also guarantees the citizens of Kenya the highest attainable health standards. But the question is, given the situation that we have today, you can agree with me that probably 70% of our populace, actually the poor, are not able to access quality health care. You can even attest as of now, during this COVID pandemic, we have a situation whereby we have incessant strikes where health workers are on strike because of poor remuneration and also bad working conditions. And to add to that, that really translates also to poor services that our citizens are having. So what we are saying is that as much as the law, the constitution guarantees our people that right to health, it is not still attainable. And just as like the constitution also guarantees the health workers the right for fair remuneration, that has also been has not also been attained. And that brings us back to the debate that we must work hard to enforce, to realize our constitution that we promulgated in 2010. You can see even as of today, on issues of governance, at a time when we should be spending our the last coin that we have in actually protecting the health workers, the same coin is being going into pockets that is not supposed to go. At the time that we should providing our health workers with protective personal gear, the same money that is supposed to buy the health worker that protective gear is going into individual pockets. It's a very, very sad situation of affair. And if you don't protect the health worker, definitely you are not protecting the Kenyan citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Indeed, we must protect the citizen by safeguarding those funds meant for their livelihood and protection. One more round of applause for Alfred. Now, a group that has been championing this cause and actually over the last few weeks has partnered with the Strathmore Law School is the International Commission of Jurists. And they've been having a series of webinars looking at various aspects of the Constitution, taking stock of where we are. And if you've been keen and on their pages and following the conversations on Facebook, all of them have been posted on YouTube as well for you to catch, just to dig deeper on the importance of this Constitution and whether those aspects have been implemented. So to speak more on that series is Elsie Saina, and she's the head of programs and research at ICJ Kenya. She's here with us and will take us through that series.
Thank you, Victoria. Colleagues, friends, comrades, and Katiba Institute. We're delighted at ICJ Kenya this discourse for over nearly 1 week of overall objective reflect as ICJ on select themes, select chapters of the Kenyan Constitution as part of culminating into today's 10th anniversary. So with the Strathmore Law School, what we did is that Strathmore, as an academic institution, was able to pull together a team of experts to look at select chapters, and we specifically focused not on all of them because it would have taken us an entire year to reflect on the Katiba. But we picked the important salient chapters that we thought that as ICJ we could engage with the members of the public and with the academia in interrogating how far has Kenya come in terms of implementing the Constitution since we promulgated in August 2010. And the themes that we picked, and I'm glad to have Senator with us today, is actually public finance. Secondly, we looked at devolution. What has devolution done for the people of Kenya? We looked at land environment, and I'm glad to have the social justice Wajira and Adin about that today. And the most contentious for the women's we began with questioning ourselves and saying, has this institution transform the society of Kenya. And looking at the observations and the conclusions from the Kenyans, their comments, their feedback, unfortunately, if we give it between a 1, Kenya is at 3 or 2% in terms of implementing the commitment and the principles we set ourselves 10 years ago. So it's not looking good. And even you can confirm that from, the skits we've had today, the conversations from Madare Justice Center, our partners commission. It's a time to introspect as people of Kenya. Where are we going? Wanted as the people of Kenya. And just this morning, we were looking with, the say, standing on the shoulders of the giants who Victoria has mentioned, every webinar has issued a communique, and I will only pick some of the essays in terms of transform analysis. What is the people of over a very negotiated process? We've had 3 Katibas, versions of Katibas. Eventually, we had the that was what Kenyans in the first webinar actually concluded. Secondly, the envisaged transformative nature of our society to enhance the poor and the marginalized lives. Article 43, as our colleague has just mentioned, right to health, right to education. Where do we stand? That is still. And then the own of principle of separation of powers. The Kenyans were very clear that this has been watered down mainly by the executive. You've seen the attacks on the judiciary. The judiciary is starved of resources. Judiciaries, are being facilitated to allow access to justice for common minorities. Just today, we finally launched the alternative justice policy. That is an opportunity to have disputes violated away from the formal court system, from the court processes. Yet, Article 159 says justice is part of the people of Kenya. The people of Kenya who donate the dispute resolution processes to the judiciary as well as the judiciary safeguarding our rights. So a question of interest is how far has the judiciary or legislature supported the judiciary in ensuring that some of the ideals we envisaged in Article 159 have been actually implemented? Public finance, that's too much because, but I think the Kenyans say that, all the parameters and all the policies and aspects of design for public finance in the country are already contained in the Constitution. The issue is how to implement that has been politicized, and they would like an opportunity to go back and reflect, where do we go? So that our public resources are not plundered, and the people who are plundering that are held to account. On devolution, I think devolution was the most talked about during the webinars, and a lot of Kenyans actually did appreciate that it has been the most transformative part of our governance architecture, bringing power closer to the people. And therefore, their biggest assessment is that the corruption has been evolved, has gone to the devolution processes. So we need to push back as the people of Kenya and hold our leadership at the county level accountable for the public resources that they are given to implement on service delivery. They also say in terms of public participation at the devolution system, it is still very, very, very formalistic. They say that, we need to ensure that the process is really meaningful. When you say public participation, how meaningful is that for the people of Kenya? The observations and the conclusions were that it's still an area that we need to talk about. And an area that is close to my heart, quality and administration, and the place of women in elective and appointing positions. As one of the this morning told us in our webinar, that to her, it seems that this is a mirage. I don't know
what a mirage is in Kiswahili, but she gets the sense.
The two parts, and then so when decision making, both in let's go back and question what was the intent. And
Land and environment,
it is the most litigated, yet the least funded in of had the Kariobangi group. The problems and the frustrations have gone. Yet they currently have rights contained within the Bill of Rights. Where do they go when their rights are violated? So the land and environment are contentious. You know, abuse of our environments. What are the processes to make sure that all those who are plundering the environment are held to account? That is still a significant focus and reflection on how we not only are very good and progressive, but also how to hold those who actually violate our right, clean and
healthy environment. We include water, resources, right to housing. And finally, national security. National security was a common
was officially declared a disaster in Kenya, and then we had
the lockdown measures by the government and
violations by the police. Asked the
participants asked, is the national
security and the principles that were
envisaged in the Constitution had they
living up to it? Is our police a force or is it to the people of Kenya? So the conclusion was the police force, and that is something that we need to talk about in terms of our national security. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we concluded this morning by saying that when we reflect back through all the 6 weeks, that the issue remains the closing the gap between what is in our constitution and the impact. How do we close that gap as a people of Kenya? When we reflect back on the continue to
implementation, but more importantly, how is the state or the government respecting the values that
we set out as Kenya 10 years ago? So thank you very much on behalf of ICJ Kenya. We would be delighted to answer any more questions. Again, as I mentioned, we have all our communiques, all our write-ups on our website. Join us on our Twitter. Ask us questions on your rights, judiciary. We'd be happy to answer in detail. Thank you very much.
For breaking down the highlights from those very important discussions, showing the importance of ownership of this constitution in order for it to work for the average Kenyan. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we could not have this conversation, or rather it would not be complete without an elected leader on the panel. He has come, he's joined us. He is one of the very vocal senators, especially when it comes to the ongoing impasse on the revenue sharing formula going on in the Senate. He is the Narok Senator, Ledama Olekina, and he's also part of the 12-member team that is formulating a way forward on this. Do we see white smoke anytime soon? Many Kenyans are wondering what is happening in the chambers of the Senate. But of course, you are here to talk about 10 years of resourcing devolution. What Kenyans need to know about this very important aspect. The whole point of devolution was so that government would be felt in every single corner of this country. And I know you'll be speaking deeper to that. I'd like to give the floor to Senator Olekina as he takes us through this journey of devolution. Round of applause for him.
Let me put it this way. Thank you, Victoria, for hosting me. I didn't know what to expect. I was in several meetings. This is essentially my 5th meeting. In fact, I came in when I was still dealing with the issue of health of Article 43 of the Constitution. The first thing that I would like to say is that we have a smoke in terms of the revenue share, but the smoke it is not white. You know, we were not able to agree on which way to go, so we leave it up to the rest to be able to determine, because I think understanding what the Constitution says in terms of factors to be considered when dividing revenue is something which is still far, and people need to be able to demystify what Article 2 or 3 of the Constitution says about what to be considered when you are distributing revenue, Article 217 and also Article 216. In fact, the role of each constitutional body. I have to say, within the last 10 years, we are still very young in terms of understanding the Constitution. And I think it's about time that the younger generation take their leaders to task. We have got the doctrine of separation of power, and each arm of government must ensure that they stay within their own line. I've been very concerned about the executive trying to control both the judiciary and the legislative arm of government. I can see Professor Yash Paul Gai, who I have tremendous respect for the good work that he has done for many years around the world. Maybe, Victoria, what I can do, just briefly, I can be able to demystify some of the issues that we're dealing with when it comes to the issue of revenue. Remember, the Senate is set up under Article 96 to defend the interests of counties and their governments. And one of the critical role of the Senate is once every 5 years to determine the basis of dividing revenue among counties, not the formula. But we seem to be confused because first we had a transitioning formula, which was, I think, for 1 year. And then we had the second generation formula, which lapsed June 30th. And what the law says is that if, I believe it's Article 217(7) of the Constitution, it clearly says that if we cannot be able to determine as a Senate, then we still maintain the same Article 217. We still maintain the same second generation formula as a basis of dividing revenue. CRA, which is a constitutional body that has been set up to come up with a basis. And with them coming up with a basis, they have to consider and actually communicate with a lot of different bodies. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is one of them, because we need to know how many poor people are in Kenya. We need to know every county, how many people, how many households are in those counties. We also need to consider the challenges. We keep on talking about session paper number 10 of 1965, which concentrated mostly development along the railway line. You know, there are more productive areas, but what about other counties? And when we came in with the new constitution and we now devolved resources into counties, I think we only did it on paper. Money did not follow those functions. If you look at health as one of them, which is one of the most lucrative for the corrupt cartels sector in this country, very little is devolved. In fact, the Commission of Revenue Allocation had proposed that out of the 316.5 billion shillings which are being devolved into counties, that 17% of that revenue be allocated to health. Now, when you come to look at how that is demystified, you find that the Ministry of Health policy in terms of how you divide the revenue does not go hand in hand with even that 17%. Because you will find that, okay, we have their budget declaration that says about 15% of every resource has got to be given to health. But when you go into a county like, let's say, for instance, Narok County, where I come from, there's nowhere you will find 5,000 people. The Maasais are very lucky. They have a lot of land, but they are few. So you cannot find, unless you have 5,000 people, you cannot put a dispensary there. So you find that that county is denied more resources. When you also find that there's a lot of money which is left behind. The Ministry of Health in itself has got a budget equivalent to allocation of 5 counties. Why do we devolve a function, but then leave all the resources with the Ministry of Health? So that is some of the challenges that we've been having. So during the last 3 years, the Commission of Revenue Allocation has been trying to come up with a basis of how we divide these resources. Remember, in the Senate, we are only talking about less than 11% of our annual budget. The National Assembly deals with a budget of about 3 trillion shillings. But when it comes to the Senate, we say we now want to send 316 billion to counties. Even dividing that and the process that we take, sometimes you'll find that even the executive interferes with that, because we're supposed to go through the budget policy statement, and then from there, we pass the division of revenue, which is between the national government and the county governments. And then after that, we've got something called the Appropriation Act, where the money is appropriated, even right before the budget. And then now, where I sit is where we have the County Revenue Allocation Act, which is called the CARA. And this is how we are now dividing the 316.5 billion. Now, for the last 3 years, CRA, which is a constitutional body that has been set up to be able to put all these factors into consideration under Article 2 or 3 of the Constitution, did their work, and they did a fantastic work. And they came up with a basis. And in this basis, it was defined into a formula. And they came up with different parameters that were to be considered. One of those parameters was population. And they gave it a weight of 18%. The second parameter was health. They gave it a weight of 17%. The third parameter was agriculture. They gave it a weight of 10%. The fourth parameter was equal basis. They say everybody, regardless of how many people you have, they gave it a weight of 20%. Then they said urban, because you know when you go to agriculture, the urban areas, they did not have agriculture. So they gave it a weight of 5%. Now, to the most contagious one, or contagious one, was land, where they gave it a weight of 8%, but they capped it at 7%. And there's a reason why they did that. And then after that, they say poverty. How many people are poor? They gave it a weight of 14%. After giving it a weight of 14%, then they calculated how many people are actually poor in every county. In the second generation formula, it was calculating how many households, but they went into counting individual poor people. Then on top of that, they said, since we're devolving money into counties, we've got to hold these counties accountable. They introduced another parameter called fiscal prudence. The money that we send to you, how well do you use this money? And in this fiscal prudence, they're looking at issues like the Auditor General report. They're looking at other issues that the Constitution requires counties to have, and even the law, the Public Finance Management Act, things like a budget committee, there's an internal audit committee. And then on top of that, they gave that a 2%, the weight of 2%. Then the last one was fiscal effort. You know, we want counties to generate revenue. I sit in the County Public Accounts and Investment Committee of the Senate, and I realized that pre-devolution, counties or county councils were collecting a lot of revenue. But when we got into the era of devolution, the governors decided to pocket all that money and now relied on this CARA, the money that they get from, which is divided between the national government and the county government. But this fiscal effort now determines how much money you can get. And there's something good about that fiscal effort, and there's also a negative aspect about the fiscal effort. A county like Narok, for example, for the last 3 years, and I'll give you the population of Narok, we're about 1.17 million people. 3 years ago, our revenue, the ones that we were collecting about 1.6 billion shillings. 2 years ago, the revenue that we were collecting about 2.3 billion shillings. Last year, we collected 3.2 billion shillings. So that's fiscal effort. So you see that the more money we get, the more benefit, or rather, the more reward we get. This is a reward because county governments set their targets. They say, this year we will collect, and Victoria, you have got to tell me how much time I have. 5 more minutes. All right. So we say how much money you can be able to collect. Based on, when you surpass your target, then you are rewarded. A county like Lamu, which only collected 70 million, they had said we'll collect about 50 million and they collected 70 million. They were rewarded with about 1 billion shillings. A county like Mombasa was also rewarded with the same amount, with about 1 billion shillings. Nakuru was also rewarded with about 1.6 billion shillings. Narok, which has been doing very well in terms of collecting revenue, also got about 1.6 billion shillings. So the problem with the fiscal effort is this: COVID hit, so the economy went down. Now, when Narok County budgets, or Nakuru County, or Mombasa, or any other county that has been doing very well, when they put their budgets together, they consider what they raised last year and the amount of money that they had last year, which is both the shareable revenue and the on-source revenue. If they are not able to raise more money, the fiscal effort is that if you say I'm going to raise 3 billion and you raise 2.9 billion, you lose almost 1 point something billion. So it really disfranchises a lot of people. So there've been a lot of intricacies. And then the other issue has been the issue of data. There's been a lot of dishonesty in terms of the population, because when we, and I can say this, we as politicians, we only care about our neck of the woods. We only care about the people who are in our area, and we want all the resources to go to them. We don't care about uniting Kenya or actually trying to really support devolution. So you find that we are not honest when it comes to, for instance, the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health will never give you the actual demographic data. When you go to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they will not give you the actual data. So you find that you might actually say in Narok, the Maasais were only probably 3 or maybe 600,000 or 700,000, and then the other people who have encroached into the area make it about 1.1 million. But we might be more, but because of the dishonesty in us, in terms of the executive, and also in terms of the legislative arm of government, we increase certain aspect of the numbers and we lower the numbers. So until we deal with the issue of dishonesty, and until we become our brother's keepers, there's no way we can be able to support devolution. So for the last 10 years, we've gone through a big challenge. And I do hope that the younger generation will now come up and fight for their rights and say, enough. We want more revenue to be devolved. Where we have reached today, and having sat in that committee of 12 for the last 9 days, we were not able to agree. We came up with a proposition, which we call it option 1, which ensured that the 316 billion, if what a county got last year, continue getting until we're able to raise more money. But then our brothers from the other side, they say, no, we don't want that. We want to take what you've been getting. We want to be able to receive that money. So now we are at loggerheads. So I think it will end up having to go into a vote because we couldn't agree. And that is the position which, or rather the advice that I want to give to young Kenyans, that we should be looking at Kenya as one country and not dividing Kenya. The more we divide and you say, I will take money from you, last year, or maybe you say, oh, you faked your data. So now we have the real data. And even that real data, you're not being forthright about it and saying, this is the real data, let's discuss it to see how we can be able to support each other. There's no way we'll be able to develop this country. And devolution will actually just die. The Senate of the Republic of Kenya, I'm very proud of it, because we've stood our ground. We have said we have to fight for devolution, and I'm very happy that I've stood my ground, because my word is the only thing I can give you. Money will not help me. So what can help me is for me to fight for that constitution that Professor Yash Balgai and many other Kenyans fought hard for it, so that we can be able to have. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Senator Olekina, for your
I don't know if you are hearing me.
still exist to ensure that devolution is indeed
Are you hearing me?
of the Kenyan people. Thank you once again, and of course, sparing time for us. I believe our keynote speaker is ready. He is joining us virtually for this particular session. Professor Yash Palgai, we call him the
Yes.
father of the Constitution. He is a respected constitutional mind, not just here in Kenya, but the continent and globally. His understanding of constitutional law, I beg your pardon, is unmatched when you look across this continent. He's a pioneering human rights defender, and he'll be giving us his reflections on a decade of Katiba, as well as its birth, implementation, and some of the challenges in ensuring it is a reality for Kenyans. Round of applause for Professor Guy.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Jill?
Professor, we
Yes,
can hear you.
we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, all
can hear
right,
you.
good. Yeah, well, I apologize for being late, but I was involved in another similar exercise. I feel more at home here, I can say. There are a number of issues that should be raised, but the important one of the issues that has been raised elsewhere is that we have a very good constitution with lots of human rights provisions, and not only just human rights, but the environment, forests, so on. And I don't want to go over, I hope you already have, about the content of the Constitution. The Bill of Rights is, of course, very important. It's placed very early in the Constitution. It's the largest chapter in the book. And I think most people say that they've never seen any constitution with such an extensive section on the evolution, on human rights. It's not only that we are telling, well, you have a right to this, we are just telling them a lot more about it, and we're telling them how they can protect their rights. And then it lists the rights they have. So it makes it a long document or chapter, but I think it's a very important chapter. Now, if you look at the record about human rights, it's really quite poor. In today's Star paper, I have quite a long article about looking at how effective rights have been under this regime, and my conclusion is very negative. I don't want to say that this constitution has not, in some ways, in many ways perhaps, improved the way of living, or and so on. But I think overall, I agree entirely that this constitution is one of the best in terms of the rights of the people, in terms of caring about the environment, fairness, and so on, and protecting of different, of men, women, children. It does this at great length, just to emphasize it. So I think there have been a number of studies, and maybe before I came, you were discussing this as well. How far have the provisions of the Constitution, the 2010 Constitution, been met? And I think in recent months, there's been studies of this area, and I think the general conclusion, at least my conclusion, is that not very much. We have not materialize the promises that we give to the people, whether it is in their own existence, whether it is in their participation in the state, about bringing different tribes together, moving away from being a country of many tribes into being a nation. with with multiplicity of cultures, but they don't come into politics. So all these are there, and but then if you look 10 years down the line, what success have we achieved? And I think the general consensus, well, I shouldn't say consensus, but the majority think that no, we have got nowhere. If you look at the standard of living of half of the population of this country, it's probably worse than it was then. And it was not that great then, but it's worse now. And schooling education, well, it's maybe a bit better, but overall, the answer is not that effective. Many essential elements about a good education system are not available. So I don't want to spend too much time. You may have discussed this question already about how far we have been able to implement the values, the principles of the Constitution. And my own comment is maybe we have not done very much. So the question is, why is it that when we have one of the, the most generous section of the Constitution about the rights, entitlements, participation of the people, why is it not been reflecting in the way in which our government is organized and the way we live, and the way resources are distributed? What I want to say is that the Constitution is in two parts, well, many parts, but two fundamental parts. One is the substantive one, your rights, or what you do in certain circumstances, economics, and so on. But then the first part is about the structure of the state. When I was doing the Burma's Constitution, I paid probably more attention to the structure of the state than I did to the substance. Because by that time, we had been a lot of debate. I had gone to villages after villages, asked what Kenyans wanted. All of this is available in the archives, but all of them weaved their way into the provisions that we made about the kind of life we want and so on. But that wasn't a problem. But I thought that we also have to have a good system of government so that these promises we make, which were and are very different from what has been happening since independence, which is just a monopoly of the large tribe leaders. And that how do we ensure that all these great ideas we have will actually have any chance of implementation? So my view was that, among the different systems of government around the world, I thought, well, the best thing that we could have would be something like a parliamentary system. Of course, I was aware of the British system. I had studied there, I had taught there, but other countries too I had studied. And I thought on balance, and given our tradition, the British tradition here, that the parliamentary system would be the best. So what I had proposed was that we should have a president rather a bit more than the Queen. The Queen really can't say anything really, though of course she's paid a lot of reference, quite rightly, but somebody who's not completely a figurehead. So, because many parliamentary systems, the president doesn't really have anything to do. I wanted to give a little bit of power, not too much, a little bit of power, because we might also need to have somebody, even a prime minister, to be looking at. So in the parliamentary system, the people take care of an inefficient or corrupt prime minister. So what we had proposed and what was in the Burma's constitution of 2004 was that there would be elections, to parliament. The president, of course, would be appointed in a different way. I mean, the president. But the elections, which would involve potential prime minister, would be held, and the person, the largest party support, whatever, would be appointed. But the president will have a little bit of a, eye on the prime minister and make sure no much deviation from his authority. But Parliament itself, you see, has the authority to remove such a person, a prime minister who's corrupt, who doesn't do the functions properly, and so on. So we have built in that kind of accountability. And then I thought if we had that, then we would get people who genuinely might have a commitment to the second part of the Constitution, which is about rights and so on, structure. And so also more accountability of the Prime Minister. He can be sacked quite quickly. By-elections can take place and so on. We don't have the same rules in the present system. You can see from the behavior of people like Uhuru and so on. They are not efficient, they are corrupt, there's nothing you can do about it. So I was very anxious that if we had produced the second part of the Constitution full of promises, full of hopes, a new Kenya, then we have to make sure that people in power respect that. So we did that. So if you look at the 2004 Constitution, you find a considerable provision about the structure of the state to ensure that they were impartial, to ensure that they were themselves accountable. They could be removed. They don't have to wait 5 years. They could be, taken off by Parliament itself, and that was all adopted. And that document you will see all this. Then what happened? There's a long history. I think most of you Kenyans, you will know from the time they. And then you see they also had gone to the court, bribed the judge to say that now we are going to come to you and we say this 2004 draft constitution is unconstitutional. And the judge was very corrupt. He was promised the best, highest paid job in the country. And he sort of looked at the case, and there were, proceedings for 2 to 3 days. And at the end, he said, "Oh, this constitution is completely illegal." Now, on what basis was it illegal? The whole process was open. The authorities that be had set us up. So every major lawyer was in that body. So that killed that 204. But that's a kind of side story. But just shows that politicians did not like some of these provisions, and they wanted to get rid of it. And they arranged this process, completely illegal, to get this constitution declared invalid. Anyway, things were difficult after that, because when the politicians started their own parties, their own processes, own elections, quite outside any proper framework, we know that there was massive killings. Thousands of people were killed. Hundreds of cases were burned. The famous sort of conflict in the first election, second elections after they kicked out this constitution. And people had to, and among politicians, they were behind this conflict, and also the burning of houses, the burning of shops, and I guess most of you around here, you see the thousands of people were killed, hundreds of houses were burned. And it was a great tragedy. So in the end, the outside help had to come in, and we had this group led by the former former head of the UN, and 6 heads of government in Africa. They came then to see, well, what's happening and what can we do? And they then proposed that the constitution be reinstated, the one we had, and there can be some adjustments. And so this 2010 constitution is a result of that exercise. But they adopted the presidential system. And by that time, you see, the control of the changes had fallen away from the hands of the people and been taken over by politicians. And politicians wanted a presidential system, because each of them thought they're going to win. So why move to the prime minister system? And that's what happened. So now we have a great contradiction between the second part of the Constitution, which is about things we've been talking about, and the other one, which is about power and the state. And there we have the problem. These people in parliament and these politicians, all of you would know this, have no respect for anything, anybody, for the poor, for the women, for a clean environment. They may rapidly making a mess of the country. So they have no interest in these provisions about human rights and so on. Of course, these provisions remained I guess most human rights, all these that we have now are taken from the 2004, the one I'm talking about. So all of these have been then taken into this constitution that we have today. But if you look, and there are many studies made in recent months or for a number of years, and you may have discussed this already, so excuse me, tell me, that if you look at the record of what progress have been achieved, especially which of the rights have been now freely available, but other things too, even environment, it's pretty clear that on almost each issue, the record is very badly. So what are we doing celebrating this great day when most people are living, or not most, several people are living in worse conditions, and there is tribal conflicts. All the things we try to avoid are there. So there's no reason to be so great, to feel, oh, what a great constitution. It is not a great constitution. It is second part is great constitution in terms of how it is looking for old people, how they are looking after the environment, and they are set out in detail, followed from the 2004 constitution. But the implementation method is different. And so if we are in a situation where people are really worse off, then it is not the fault of the Constitution, but it is it's part of the Constitution because they didn't do it properly, deliberately, you see. And by that time, the second time, I mean, the time of the present constitution, everything was under the control of the politicians. So when the eminent Africans came, they did talk to the public broadly, but they took their, they were discussing with the politicians all the time. And though I think their report is a pretty good report, they left too much discretion to politicians to complete the process. And the politicians clearly wanted what we have now. And so I think, in conclusion, I would say that we have a good set of ideas, and some of them have been implemented. I mustn't exaggerate that. Some things are better, but overall, we have not achieved anything like we should. In 10 years, when there was a lot of support internationally, otherwise, but we are worse. We are worse than we were at that time. So that's my thing. Because of this flaw in the structure of government, we are paying a heavy price, certainly forfeiting the chances that the Constitution otherwise opens. Thank you very much.
Professor Guy.
Yes.
And it is unfortunate that your assessment is we haven't reached that point yet. We are far worse 10 years later than when the Constitution was promulgated. And that should put a lot of fire under the seats of the agitators, the human rights defenders, those who are in this space, those who are watching on social media, to do much more to ensure that this Constitution is indeed implemented. 10 years is a long time. And to hear from the father of the Constitution that we haven't reached that point yet. It's a bit discouraging, but hopefully that is pressure and impetus to do something and to realize the fruit of that Constitution. One more round of applause for Professor Guy. Thank you so much for your insights. And we pray to have the same memory that you do once we reach the 8th floor. Thank you once more. And at this point, I'd like
How
to
far have you
invite
progressed in your
Irene
discussion?
Soila, Program Officer here at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, to move a vote of thanks and to give closing remarks.
Yes. How far are you proceeding? Are you concluding the... Hello?
So thank you very much for your attendance, all that came to attend this very important activity. It was Katiba at 10. And what that means to us is that we must at all time be available to protect and safeguard the Constitution. Our Constitution 2010 was given to us by our elders, the likes of Yashpal Gai, and they have given us the mantle now to continue protecting and safeguarding and even asking for implementation of the Constitution as the youth and the young of this country. It is now, the ball is on our side, the ball is now with us to be able to make sure that we push this to the next level and even to our generations to come. So I appreciate everyone. I appreciate the panelists, those that came in through virtually, and even those who made into this to this tent. We really appreciate yourselves. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for giving us an insight of what the Katiba holds for us and the need for us to continue protecting the Constitution. Most importantly, to our performers, the artist 5Cs, and also Dofan, who's left. Thank you very much for participating and making sure that we are entertained and even having the theme of the Constitution and its protection within your artistic work. So we continue saying thank you. We continue having you even in this journey of where we need to protect the Constitution. Without much, and we also to say thank you very much to a sign language interpreter. It is quite a good work that you have to communicate to that constituency that may not be here, but always the conversation around the Constitution, which touches on them also, is felt, and they get to know this information. And to all those who made this possible, to our technical group there, and to also the KHRC staff. Thank you very much for making it possible. Thank you very much for having us and also having given this work and event and a good opportunity. For our moderator, we don't know how to say thank you, but let me just say thank you, thank you, thank you. You did a very good job, even after 1 hour of being very late. You were able to make sure that we are within the time, and that was very, very tremendous. Thank you very much, Rubadiri. So without much ado, we want to close this and just say we have a next activity to come. The Constitution, we're not ending it here. We will continue speaking, and we'll continue having these events to profile the Constitution even beyond this activity. Thank you very much, and most welcome to KHRC at all times. Thank you.
Mambo ya ukoloni ni yale, mambo ni yale, simameni ni yale, yale. Mambo ya ukoloni, mambo ni yale, watu wetu wa kila mahali, na yote kwa wanayotupiwa na wadhalimu wanyonyaji walimo nchini mwetu, kama ni ile. Woi, 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 mambo ni yale.